2001 NBA MVP, Allen Iverson.
Every legend has rivals, and for Allen Iverson, those rivalries weren't just about basketball. They were about pride, survival, and respect. At 6 feet tall, Iverson was constantly underestimated. Night after night, he had to face opponents who towered over him, tested him, and sometimes made his life miserable on the court. And while Iverson earned admiration for his toughness, there were certain players he flat out hated going up against. Not because he disliked them as people, but because every matchup felt like war. These were the guys who blocked his shots, chased him for 48 minutes, and forced him to dig deeper than anyone else ever did. Iverson once said, "Some nights, I felt like I had to score 40 just to give us a chance. And a lot of that was because of who was standing in front of me." So who were these players? Who were the 6 names that haunted Iverson's matchups? The ones that made him shake his head in frustration, and the ones he later admitted were the hardest to handle. Today, we're breaking down the top 6 basketball players Allen Iverson hated facing the most. From dominant defenders to unstoppable scorers, to rivals who made his greatest battles unforgettable, these are the legends who turned every game into a fight for survival. Because to truly understand Iverson, you have to understand not just his highlights, but also his obstacles. And these 6 obstacles became part of what made him the answer. Stay tuned, because one name on this list might just shock you. Stephon Marbury. Few names followed Iverson through his career quite like Stephon Marbury. Both were undersized guards, both lightning quick, both capable of taking over a game at any moment. And because of that, the comparisons never stopped. Who was better? Who was the real franchise guard of their era? Iverson admitted he hated those conversations, but he hated playing against Marbury even more. Unlike many of his rivals, Marbury wasn't just taller or stronger. He was built almost exactly like Iverson, which meant every matchup felt like fighting a mirror image. Marbury's strength and explosiveness gave him an edge that forced Iverson to work for every inch. He could bulldoze his way to the rim, hit clutch shots from outside, and push the pace just as relentlessly as Iverson did. He was one of those guys you couldn't relax against, Iverson once reflected. If I slowed down for even a second, he'd take over. Their clashes in the late 90s and early 2000s were fierce, especially when Marbury was with the New Jersey Nets and later the Phoenix Suns. Fans saw 2 small guards battling like heavyweights, trading buckets and refusing to back down. But what made Marbury especially tough for Iverson wasn't just his skills, it was the rivalry itself. Every time they met, the narrative was there. Iverson versus Marbury. 2 players fighting not only for the win, but for validation. And for a competitor like Iverson, that constant comparison was exhausting. He hated it. For him, Stephon Marbury wasn't just another opponent, he was a measuring stick. A reminder that every game was a battle to prove who truly belonged at the top of the guard hierarchy. Chauncey Billups. If Iverson thrived in chaos, then Chauncey Billups was the exact opposite. Calm, steady, and in complete control. And that's exactly why Iverson hated going up against him. Nicknamed Mr. Big Shot, Billups wasn't the fastest guard or the flashiest scorer. But he had something Iverson despised facing: patience. While Iverson loved to push the pace, attack, and play at full speed, Billups slowed everything down. He dictated tempo like a chess master, forcing Iverson into a game he didn't want to play. Their battles reached a peak when Iverson's Sixers clashed with Billups and the Detroit Pistons. That Pistons team was built on discipline and defense, and Billups was their anchor. He didn't panic under pressure, he didn't rush, and when the game was on the line, he always seemed to find the perfect shot. Iverson often admitted how frustrating it was to face guards like Billups. He never let you speed him up, Iverson said. You couldn't rattle him. And when you thought you had him, he'd hit the big one. One of the toughest memories for Iverson came later in his career, when he was traded to Denver and eventually matched up against Billups again. Only this time, Billups was the one who replaced him. For Iverson, it was salt in the wound. Billups not only slowed him down on the court, but also symbolized the shift from Iverson's era of explosive guards to a new generation of controlled, methodical floor generals. For Iverson, Chauncey Billups was more than a rival. He was the player who forced him into uncomfortable battles, who made him play against his own nature. And that was something Iverson hated more than anything. Baron Davis. When people talk about Iverson's rivals, one name doesn't always come up first. But for Iverson himself, Baron Davis was unforgettable. Baron wasn't just strong, he was explosive. At 6 feet 3 inches and built like a tank, Davis had the rare combination of power and speed that even Iverson struggled to keep up with. He could post up smaller guards, muscle his way into the paint, and still blow by defenders with surprising quickness. Iverson once admitted in an interview that Davis was the guard he hated guarding the most. He was too strong, too quick. You couldn't push him around, and you couldn't stop him from getting to his spots. In their early 2000s matchups, Iverson with the Sixers, Davis with the Hornets, and later the Warriors, fans saw two of the most athletic guards of their generation clash head-to-head. Iverson flying around with unmatched energy, Baron answering with thunderous drives and fearless finishes at the rim. What made Davis especially frustrating for Iverson was his versatility. He wasn't just a scorer. He could rebound, defend, and pass, making him dangerous in every part of the game. And unlike many other guards, he had the strength to wear Iverson down physically, bumping him off his path and making every possession a grind. Baron Davis never won an MVP or carried a team to the finals like Iverson, but in their direct battles, he always earned Iverson's respect and his frustration. For Iverson, facing Davis was like fighting against himself, only in a bigger, stronger body. And that was the kind of challenge he absolutely hated. Reggie Miller. Some players Iverson hated because of their athleticism, others because of their strength. But Reggie Miller? He was different. Iverson hated him because he got into your head. Miller wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. But he was one of the most dangerous shooters in NBA history. And one of the biggest trash talkers. He thrived on the mental game, and for a fiery competitor like Iverson, that made every matchup personal. Guarding Miller was pure torture. He never stopped moving, running off endless screens, curling into space and catching the ball in rhythm. By the time you fought through one screen, he was already sprinting to another, and if you gave him even a second, the shot was gone. But what made Miller especially frustrating was his timing. He didn't just hit shots, he hit the biggest shots. The ones that broke momentum and silenced entire arenas. Iverson remembered how painful it was to see Miller bury a dagger 3 after the Sixers had fought so hard to stay alive. And then, there was the talk. Reggie Miller never missed a chance to chirp at opponents, to remind them they weren't doing enough, to twist the knife after every make. For Iverson, who thrived on pride, that was the ultimate irritation. By the time Miller retired, Iverson admitted he respected him deeply. But during those battles, he couldn't stand it. The constant running, the clutch shooting, the non-stop chatter. For Iverson, Reggie Miller represented the kind of opponent you hate, not just because of what he does physically, but because of how he gets inside your mind and makes you play his game instead of your own. Paul Pierce. Some opponents Iverson hated because they were loud. Paul Pierce wasn't one of them. He didn't need trash talk. He let his game do the talking. And that's exactly what made him so frustrating. Nicknamed The Truth, Pierce was one of the most cold-blooded scorers of his era. He wasn't flashy and he wasn't the most athletic, but he had a methodical style that broke defenses apart piece by piece. For Iverson, it felt like death by 1,000 cuts. Whenever the Sixers met the Celtics, Iverson knew Pierce would make things difficult. He'd post up smaller defenders, use his strength to bully his way into position, and then calmly hit mid-range jumpers or step out and drain threes. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't panic. He just kept coming. What Iverson hated most about Pierce was his ability to rise in the clutch. Time after time, when the game was on the line, Pearce delivered. He thrived in pressure moments, knocking down dagger shots that killed Iverson's momentum and stole games away from Philadelphia. Pearce was one of those guys you couldn't shake, Iverson once admitted. You'd throw everything at him, and he'd still find a way. For Iverson, it wasn't just Pearce's talent, it was his composure. While Iverson played with raw energy and emotion, Pearce played like ice water flowed through his veins. That contrast made every duel even more maddening. In the end, Pearce earned Iverson's respect. But in the heat of battle, he was the type of opponent Iverson hated most. Calm, unbothered, and deadly when it mattered. Ray Allen. If there was one opponent Iverson truly hated chasing, it was Ray Allen. Allen wasn't the strongest player, he wasn't the loudest, but he was relentless. Every possession, every quarter, every game, the man just never stopped moving. For Iverson, who carried the Sixers offense night after night, guarding Allen felt like running a marathon with no finish line. What made it worse was Allen's perfection. His shooting form was flawless, his conditioning unmatched. He would weave through a maze of screens, catch the ball in stride, and release it before a defender could even react. Iverson admitted that even when you played great defense, it often didn't matter. Ray Allen was going to get his shot off. The 2001 Eastern Conference Finals against Allen's Milwaukee Bucks became one of the defining clashes of Iverson's career. Iverson poured in 44 points in Game 7 to finally push Philadelphia to the finals. But Allen was spectacular throughout the series. His ability to stretch the floor forced Iverson to work harder than ever, chasing him across the court while still carrying his own team on offense. What Iverson hated most wasn't just Allen's shooting, it was his consistency. Carter might have off nights, T-Mac might coast, Pearce might choose his moments. But Ray Allen? He brought the same effort every single game. That wore on you. For Iverson, Ray Allen symbolized the opponent you dreaded. The one who didn't just beat you with highlights, but who broke you down slowly, methodically, until the buzzer sounded. And that's why, no matter how much respect he had for Allen, Iverson hated facing him. 6 players, 6 different styles, and 6 reasons why Allen Iverson said some nights felt like war. Stephon Marbury, the mirror image, always chasing the same crown. Chauncey Billups, the floor general who slowed the game to a crawl. Baron Davis, the powerhouse guard who matched Iverson's fire with brute strength. Reggie Miller, the trash-talking sharpshooter who lived in your head. Paul Pierce, the cold-blooded closer who thrived in silence. And Ray Allen, the relentless machine who never stopped moving. Each of them tested Iverson in ways he hated. Some wore him down physically. Some frustrated him mentally. Others reminded him that no matter how much heart you had, sometimes talent and style could feel unfair. But that was the beauty of it. These were the rivals that shaped Iverson's career, the obstacles that forced him to fight harder, to push further, and to prove, again and again, why he was called the answer. So now it's your turn. Which of these 6 do you think gave Iverson the hardest battles? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just change the way you see the game.